and the red. Um, and so I had that in my head, and I went to an antique mall and saw the ladder, that the little ladder that's in the picture.
Mhm.
And I went, oh, I love that. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I had to buy it.
Uh-huh.
And on the way home, I was like, oh, I could use the same color palette if I can, find some flowers that work with that. So that's how that came about.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I love the ladder. I think the ladder is really good. And then I love the color palette when you throw those roses in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty.
yeah. I wouldn't have I think picked them if it hadn't already been kind of introduced to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I really like it.
Yeah. And then I like your whole setup. I like what you did. Um, so it comes it, we're trying to create good photographs and you created a good photograph.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, this was this. I'm trying to remember. I shot it a couple times. Um, I think this one was more afternoon light because you can see there was a little bit harsher shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, this was with just my nifty 50
Mm-hmm.
lens.
Right.
Yeah.
Just it you can see over here on the
Okay. Yeah,
right
cool.
hand side. So it's the 50 millimeter lens at the 1.8. So it's got a very shallow depth of field, but it presents well because that makes the ladder go more out of focus.
Yeah.
And then here was your diagonal, if I'm not mistaken.
Um, Actually, no, I didn't intend for it to be a diagonal.
That it was
Uh,
your color palette. Okay, sorry.
yeah,
I couldn't see
no,
my
that's fine.
yeah.
I thought this was a better picture than the one above it, but I wanted y'all to be able to see like what what I had been kind of thinking and doing.
Uh-huh.
But I liked this picture better.
Yeah. So this is the one that you like better.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. I'm not really sure why. I guess
Yeah.
um I don't know, maybe I do like kind of you can see the flowers a little bit better, more
Uh-huh.
detailed
What do you
flowers.
all think? Everybody else, do you like the first one better or do you like the second one better?
I
I
like
like
the
the
first.
I like the first one. I think they're both beautiful though.
Yeah, they are.
thank
They
you.
are.
Cool. Thank you.
And on these, by the way, always tear off those bottom petals
Yeah.
because yeah, we don't notice them when we're taking the pictures, but we notice them afterwards, the wrinkled petals on the bottom. I think both of them are really neat. Yeah. Henry and Lexi, which ones do you like better? So the first one or the second one?
I like the first.
You like the first, Lexi?
They're both, yeah, both
Yeah.
nice.
Okay, that's really good feedback.
Yeah.
So probably pretty basic for everyone else, but I'm not sure about how you go to find the color palette. I've got my notes from the last class, but I guess I missed it.
You went to the website that I gave you, Color Finder.
Yep, I did that. But
Yeah.
then I didn't know what to do, I think, once I got
Oh,
there.
and then
Sorry.
you just find a color palette you want to work with.
Okay. Do you just search
Uh-huh.
color palette?
No, well, I don't know. Somebody else explain how you found the color palette you looked for.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Susan, Jennifer, Amanda, how'd you find?
Oh.
I sort of reverse engineered it. I have a plant, the begonia, Rex begonia, that I love the colors in, and so then I went hunting for a palette that had the colors in it that most nearly coincided with the ones in the plant, rather than picking a palette first and then looking for a plant. That's pretty much how I did it too. I found the roses that I wanted to use, and then I went and looked for a color palette that those roses would fit into, and then I just had to think, okay, what can I use in this photo that will complete the color palette? Because my roses only took up two of the colors in the palette, and I needed two more, so that's how I did it.
Yeah, so that's exactly how. So this top color palette, for instance, Henry, if you had a couch that was this aqua color, then this would say, okay, so your accent pieces in the room would need to be, could be this color, this color, this color, and this color.
So, I went on the website and I saw the color wheel. I never did find how to find a color palette.
It
on
was
that.
it was a separate website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
And
right.
I think it's in your handout, but if not, it's I think it's on your
I did colorhunt.co,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's where I went.
and then I also had color.adobe.com.
Mhm.
But I didn't really find color palettes, but I'm sure I'll just go look again.
It's the colorhunt.com.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you can start with one color, or you can just go to the favorites or something like that.
Okay. I'll play with it.
Give it another look. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. And then here is your complementary colors, Amanda.
Right.
Is this your lens baby?
Yeah, because I went to the Fort Worth Botanic Garden, and that was I did most of that with the lens baby. So yeah.
Yeah, because it's the focus is right back at the back of the pansy instead of in the front of the pansy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tricky to get it, especially when you have a low or a shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
It's really tricky.
Yeah. And if you're not on a tripod, then the slightest movement, you're out of focus.
I didn't set up a tripod.
Yeah. And then here is your diagonal playing with your roses again. This is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely. I love that.
Oh, thanks. Part of why I picked it is because I wasn't sure, because I wanted to ask about white balance. Sure. I like the way it looks, but I also thought the white balance wasn't right. But when I tried to like fix it, I couldn't get it to look good, I guess.
Yeah, because your white balance is a little bit on the blue side, but then that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
But then if we keep adding a little bit of golden, then we finally get there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even think to like just do that. I was trying to like take I was taught to like do the the little eyedropper. Try and find like a spot. And I was not finding a spot that was
correct.
It would do that.
Yes. And the only reason that I can say this now, because I'm going to take it back to as shot, is I'm working on a project and I have to white balance all the pictures, like 400 and something scanned slides. And most of them just need a little bit of golden.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, because sometimes that eyedropper tool, we don't know, we're supposed to touch something that's supposed to be 18% gray. So that little blob up there on the camera works better.
Okay.
Let me take that back to as shot again. There we go. Yeah. See, so we're supposed to touch something that's supposed to be 18% gray.
How do you know it's 18% gray? You
just guess. It's just a light gray. You just touch something that's a light gray. And if you see, if I touch all those different colors of light gray on that camera in the back, each one of them gives me a slightly different one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad I asked that then.
Yeah, it's a good question. And then here is your orchids.
Yeah. This was at the Botanic Garden too, and I this is kind of a diagonal too, so I put that in there.
Yeah. And then here's looks like an amaryllis Botanic Garden as well.
Yes. Yeah. This was the primary color.
Yeah. So this is that red right against the green, which is wonderful. Yeah. Now that focus again need to be there.
Yeah.
What camera are you using, Amanda?
I have a EOS R, Canon EOS R.
So if you turn on focus peaking,
Focus peaking. Okay.
and you change the color to maybe yellow, because you can do yellow, blue, or red. But wherever it's in focus, it'll be edged in red. Or on this red flower, you couldn't see it. So you'd change it to yellow. And wherever it's in focus, whatever's in focus will be edged in yellow.
Okay, I can't, well, let me check on that, but I think when I do the manual focus, it doesn't show me anything.
That's what it's for, is manual focus.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. You
Yeah,
have to-
you don't see it unless you're in manual focus.
Okay, and
But
then
you have to turn focus peaking on.
and change it to, did you say yellow, if like, or red, or
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because your options are yellow, red, or blue where it's in focus. And so I changed mine to yellow because I tend to, like on a red flower, you're never going to see it.
Right, right. Okay.
But it might help with that lens, baby.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Because otherwise you've got a great composition and definitely is primary colors.
Cool.
Just has to be in focus. But
Mhm.
maybe that little thing right there is in focus, where I would think that the anthers up here needed to be in focus. Anyway, if you don't look at it real close, it's a great picture. and fun to go out and play with the new lens.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, Henry, here's yours. Complementary colors. Right, Henry?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yep. Red and green. And
Uh-huh.
I think I was using the 50 to 200 millimeter ones.
Mm-hmm. And you're at F9, which is exactly right, because you see that all the azaleas are in focus, but then the background is not in focus.
Yeah.
So you did a good job on that one.
Thank you.
And remember what we were talking about last week, where the colors would almost be too much? This is this is a real good example of that. There's azaleas. So they're almost too much, where if, let's see if I can tone them down just a little bit.
Mm.
No, I can't tone them down too much, but they're almost, see how you can't see all the detail inside the azaleas?
I do now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's almost a little, I could probably work with the raw file, but I can't do too much right now.
Yeah.
And that's this spike right here over on the histogram, that spike going up. So that's a little bit of a concern that we need to underexpose that. So remember that with your tulips, okay? When you go to Holland, because some of those are really going to explode with color.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So you think just underexpose a half a stop or stop?
Yeah, about a half a stop. You just notice this spike in the reds right there. Now watch on your yellow, and I have to compliment you on this. You chose exactly the right color for a background for this one.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, I don't think you could have got a better blue.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah. It's really good. Now notice also, see the spike over here in this red channel, and you see how it's clipped off up at the top.
Oh yeah.
Right there. That means you've gone off the channel. You've got too much of that color.
But I don't see any red. It's in there?
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah. Yeah. And so this is one again where I bet you, see, if we underexpose ever so slightly, the detail in the Gerber daisy comes out, and I got rid of that spike.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can you use the curve to pull down that spike also?
You could use the curve to pull that down.
Okay.
Yeah. And what you've got with all the sliders really is just playing with your curves and things. But yeah, this is one. See where the edge of the Gerber daisy is a little on the hot side. This is one where you could have photographed it slightly underexposed.
Wow.
Yeah. So watch out for those little topped off ones. That red is a good example of that. But you chose absolutely the right background on this one, Henry.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very pretty. And the same thing with your purple and yellow. I think that once again with the color of that purple and then you put it with that background. So how'd you find your backgrounds?
So I went to Texas Art Supply and I was going to buy some of the spray paints, and they had a whole bunch of poster boards and colors. And I thought that maybe their colors would be truer. So I bought fibers. They were like 99 cents or 89 cents each, really
Yeah.
cheap.
Yeah.
So I bought a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. And Henry and I talked on the phone about this because he was saying that what he saw at Michael's didn't look right, but he lives near Houston Art. And I remember going in there with my son when he was younger and knew that they would have a much bigger variety. In a massive, huge art store as opposed to the Hobby Lobby or the Michaels. Because that's the perfect color for that purple.
Great.
And that's your symmetrical. So you
Yes.
did absolutely great with that one. And then here's your purple and your yellow.
Yes.
And if we brighten it up just a little bit, oh, let's do Amanda's white balance.
Ooh, okay. Ooh,
Yeah, little too blue on that one. So I would just golden it up just a hair.
okay.
Yeah. But very pretty. They go well together. Those complementary colors, the
They
purple
really
and the
do.
yellow.
They
Yeah.
really do.
Okay. Now here's your lily. And tell me what you did between the two photographs.
The second one is I added some more green tint, because the first one I didn't think it was kind of green, but not really the background.
Yeah. Now this is what came out of the camera and then you color corrected this one?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Yes, I agree. It needs a little bit more green. I just thought you had two different backgrounds on it.
Oh, no, the same background. I just moved the tint to the left on the second one.
Mm-hmm. I think you did a good job.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. What do y'all think? Do you like the grayer or the greener?
I
The
like the greener. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it looks a lot better. Okay, good job. What'd you find on this, Henry? What'd you learn?
Well, I learned a little bit about color palettes, which I knew nothing. Other than, some things look good together and some don't. That was my knowledge up to.
Now you have a little bit more idea of why things go well together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good job. You did you did a nice job. I especially like the color combinations on these two.
Oh,
I
great.
think you did a really nice job on that one.
Thanks.
Okay, Jennifer, why'd you choose this one?
Well, it's like I said earlier, the roses that I found had the pink and the cream, although that picture is more white than cream, but
Yeah.
I liked the way this looked together, and I thought, how can I do this? And there's laundry hanging on that chair over there. So like, hey, I think I will try see what it looks like poking out of a jean pocket. And that's what I did.
I love it. Think you did a great
Thank you.
job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very creative. And I think you worked it really well.
Thank you. It was not easy. I had to try I don't know, 30 different ways of putting. I tried hanging the pants. No, it doesn't work. Yeah, I had to lay it down. I mean, I tried in the house. I tried outside. It was just, when am I going to get the right one? And I finally did.
Yeah. Very good. And then also you notice it's at 2.8. So, that's extra challenging because that just means that it's got super shallow depth of field. But I think for the photo, the super shallow depth of field works just fine.
It seemed to work here. So
yeah, I like it. I like it. And it's nice too, because this little bit of red in the jeans just ties back into the roses.
I didn't even notice the red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
questions, opinions, thoughts on this one? Everybody?
Did you end up shooting this one inside or outside?
I actually think it was outside, like under the canopy in my backyard. If I remember correctly, I think that one was outside. It was evening, I guess.
Uh-huh. A little softer light.
Right.
Yeah. And why horizontal versus vertical? Because it can
When
go
I
either way.
Right, and I did try vertical, but the jeans just kept, they're actually overalls, and I'm trying to hang them, and they just kept like collapsing. They were very soft, not very
Uh-huh.
stiff at all. And so laying them down just seemed to work better. I could get the photo if I did it hanging up, that they would all fold in on itself. So
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
And roses falling down the pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's a lovely image. It's a very pretty image.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got a lot of feeling to it. And it does fit the color palette. So I think it's really nice. Yeah. And then that 24-70 that just gives it's got such a good quality lens. And then here is your complementary colors.
Mhm. Yes, for this one, I went shopping and I found these two plants and I potted them together in one pot.
Mhm.
And then I took about 1,000 pictures of these and I picked the one I thought was the best. But then after I submitted, I was looking at it again and going, it's not, it's blurry.
Oh,
The blue ones.
uh-huh.
And so I wasn't totally happy with it, but
Yeah. Well, this one you would have needed, you're shooting at 2.8. So this would
right.
have needed a lot of depth of field. This would have been,
Mhm.
F9 or F10 to try to get
Right.
those blue flowers. But they're
Yeah.
beautiful in the blue and the purple and the green. They're really pretty.
Thought they went together well.
Yeah. And then here I like your golden thirds,
Mhm.
especially with the dog.
Right. That was fun because I kept trying to get the dogs I had a couple of dogs back there. I'm like, okay, go make them chase you, so I can see if they'll get in the photo. And that one turned out really good.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It's very well done. I like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the dog can be at 2.8. It's perfectly fine. We know what it is. We know it's a backyard. So, we're right there with you. We know what's going on.
Yeah.
But then it's nice and daring to focus over here instead of focusing on the dog. So I like it. I think it's a beautiful image.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then here is your red, yellow, and blue.
Mhm. Yeah, that one was kind of hard too because that's poster board. I learned from Henry last week. He used poster board, and so I thought I'm going to try that. And there was a window, obviously, to the left, and the light coming through the blinds, and took a bunch of different ones, posed the flowers in different ways, and that's the one that I decided on.
Yeah, it's very pretty. And notice the histogram over here. See how it's topping out?
Yes.
So
see that now.
Yeah. And so that's telling us. And then over here on the far side, on the left, on the right, we've got a spike. So that's the overexposures right in there.
Yeah.
In those areas. But this is one where if you had a reflector to reflect the light up on these front tulips, I think the light would have been just outstanding.
That's a good point.
I like your layout, and I love the background. I think the background, gives it that beautiful, light coming through the blinds. We all know what that is.
Thank you.
Any questions on that one or comments on that one?
Really pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very pretty. I'm trying to visualize what you were saying about where to put the reflector. Can you, you would put it 'Cause I tried
right.
to use mine and I'm not really sure how to use it, I guess.
Okay, so what you do with the reflector is you hold it and you can see exactly where it's reflecting light. So if I were to hold the reflector right in front of these tulips, I suspect that the light coming through the window on the left would then bounce off the reflector and hit those red tulips in the front.
The ones on the right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
These tulips right here. Mhm.
Okay.
And would have given some light for these tulips. I bet you also that even if you took the reflector and laid it down in front of the blue vase, it would reflect light, and just angled it ever so slightly up, it would reflect light up on those tulips also.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, with a reflector. And if you want to play with it without buying a reflector, take a piece of cardboard and cover it with aluminum foil. And then you can just reflect it around, reflect the sunlight around, and wherever you see the sunlight falling on those flowers, it's going to show up in the photograph.
Okay.
Yeah. Because this, and that way you could underexpose a little bit of this back in here so that didn't overexpose, and then get some light up on these tulips right here. I love the flow of the tulips. I love the color of the vase. I think it's beautiful with the red, green, and blue. Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, pretty work.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Susan, here's yours.
Okay, so yeah, I would spend a lot of time in my backyard this week. As we were saying, I didn't go outside the backyard. This is my diagonal. I think this is the one that's diagonal.
Mm-hmm.
I started with the narcissus on the right, tall, going down to the gaillardia on the left,
Mm-hmm. With the
and
blue in between.
with the blue in between.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I use these for my colors too. So you'll see this repeating in some
Yeah.
of the other photos, but that's what the whole thing looks
Mhm.
like. And then this is my blue, and this is the complementary colors, the blue and orange.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit trouble. I mean, this blue, this is lavender, and it's blue-ish. It tends toward the violet side of blue, but it was the best I could do with. I didn't see any really like the blue bonnets. The other blue that's in this color is the tile in the pool there, and you can kind of see the light blue against that orange also, which is another color contrast. So two different shades of blue.
Mm-hmm. And also, since you had the plants in the pot in the planter, it's not like you can move things around.
No,
Yeah.
they were planted before I started taking
Yeah.
pictures. So
Yeah.
I did what I could with what I had.
But they've got the right color scheme, so it's good.
Yeah.
And then here's your verbena.
The verbena and the lantana together, and that's the complementary colors, purple and yellow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I see it in your pot too. I can.
Right.
Which is just going to be really pretty in a garden setting because everything will match.
Right. And then again, this is the primary colors of blue and yellow together.
Yeah. Yeah, and ideally we could have moved them a little closer together.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. If I had been able to move the plants, I could have moved them together.
Or use all those clamps I was telling you about. Those clamps.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the plants.
Yeah, you could have moved them all over the place. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a very small picture because that lavender flower head is not very big.
No, it's not.
Very pretty.
Yeah. And then more primary colors. And of course, if you have a red flowered plant and it's got green leaves, you've always got complementary colors there. So red and green complementary, and then with the yellow primary.
Yeah. Now notice the histogram again. See how the red is completely topped out? It's got
Right.
it's got a flat top on it. And
Right.
so that tells you that this should have been underexposed because all this red is just completely run off the channel.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that, that's just something we watch when we're out in the field. If we see that
Mhm.
histogram popping up like that, then we know, oh, that's, and you see it's in the red this time. So the red flowers, it just tells you. We don't see that type of histogram on the back of our cameras. But
Right.
here you would know that it's the red channel that's causing that problem. By the way, in post-processing, let me see if it works. There we go. So we can watch the histogram. I went to color mixer and we can move the red down, do the same in luminance. There we go. And we moved it down just a hair.
Just slightly. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's not so overexposed.
Okay.
Very pretty. We've seen that plant several times. It's continuing to
Mhm.
grow.
Right. Right. That was the first one I bought,
Uh-huh.
and I finally put it in its planter with other things.
Yeah, it's going. And then
Yeah.
here's your palette.
That's my palette, and I picked. This is not a palette I ever would have thought would be appealing to me, but I reverse engineered finding my palette, and I love my begonia, my Rex begonia. I love the colors in this plant, and when I went looking for the palette, that was the palette.
Uh-huh.
It has the reds and oranges and the light green on the edge of the leaves, and then some deeper green in some of the leaves, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it when I looked at the palette. I thought, wow, I never would have thought that would be the palette I would pick.
Mm-hmm. And you could have almost made your picture just out of one leaf.
Right, I could have, yes.
Where
Mhm.
either, see, up here we've got light coming through the leaves, and up here we've got light shining on the leaves. So you could have made your photo with almost just one leaf.
One leaf, right.
Yeah.
I wanted to capture all of the colors though, and the way the light was coming, I would lose the orange if I went with the ones that are showing more green in them, and vice versa. So that's why I didn't focus in on one closer in, because I wanted all of the colors to
All
show.
the colors, yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And then here is your last one, and that's your symmetrical.
That's my symmetrical
Mhm.
one.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. One side looks exactly like the other side, going all the way across. Yeah. So you're symmetrical there.
Yep.
Yeah. Super. Questions for Susan on her work? No? Good job. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second, and then let me get rid of all my clutter back here. Done. And so what'd you learn from that while I'm getting into my position for today? What'd y'all learn?
Well, I learned to be more intentional about the color choices and how you set up a photo, and of course all of the settings on your camera and everything, and just to think through what is the result you're looking for. That's one thing I learned.
Good, good. Exactly. What I wanted you to think about was putting some more thought into where everything went, and what colors you should be using, even if we're outside. What else did you learn?
Sorry. So I guess I have a basic question on color wheel. I understand that red and green are good complementary colors and they're opposite each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then but you can do some things like creating triangles. They don't have to be opposite.
Correct.
but I'm not sure. In other words, would green and yellow go? I know you don't want to do two colors next to each other. I don't think you do. But then I don't know, past looking for colors that are opposite from each other, what makes sense. If that,
You know,
That's
what's
good.
interesting, and if you go to that website that I gave you, you go across. So that's just like a guaranteed.
Mhm.
A triangle is a guaranteed.
Okay,
But then you can do a narrow triangle, and that's also pretty good. And
okay,
you could even do all 3 or 4 colors next to each other when you're doing something in the same color palette, where it's all golds or it's all yellows or it's all. So it's almost like there's no wrong answer.
okay,
That they go well together, but you can get the wrong colors next to each other and they just don't look any good.
okay.
Yeah. Jennifer or Amanda, from a graphics point of view, you want to explain that a little bit better?
I'm not sure I can. I don't know. It's tricky. You can always get. I mean, I know you mentioned this before. Like nature does a pretty good job of
Mhm.
taking care of it. But you can. Let me get mine. I've actually got physical color wheels. That you can
Yeah.
buy. I don't know. My screen is not showing that very well. But they'll if that's helpful too, you could buy
Mhm.
these and kind of see how this one's actually for mixing, but
Okay.
this one will kind of show you like um say you have a purple flower. It's kind of like the digital ones, but it's
Mhm.
and it will show you what works with that color.
Hmm.
So sometimes that's helpful too to have that
Okay.
with you.
Mhm. Jennifer, you have anything to add from that?
Well, a lot of times, like she said, nature does kind of take care of it, but sometimes I don't know what doesn't go to or what goes well together, but I'll know what doesn't.
Mhm.
Like if I see some colors together, I can go,
Mhm.
but I may not be able to say, oh yeah, that goes really well together. Even, I mean, it probably does, but if it doesn't, then I know.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yes, when they don't go well together, you notice it. And you notice, and you may not notice why you don't like this.
Yeah.
But you know, and I think about it in terms of getting dressed, that you don't know why this top and this bottom don't go well together or why you don't feel good in it, but it's because the harmony's off.
Yeah.
And you don't know why that room doesn't look right because the pillows are just absolutely the wrong shade. They should have been a bit darker or a bit lighter or another tone. So it's just that slight bit of throwing something off. And when you're throwing in those artificial backgrounds, then it's real easy to do that. Or even plants in pots. It's easy to get that thrown off too. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd be a shame to put together an expensive bridal bouquet and have the colors not work. But we're not doing that. Yeah, I attended somebody's wedding, and the only thing that I could think of while the whole ceremony was going on was one of the bridesmaids chose the wrong color of dress. Because the whole color palette was working except that one shade was just off.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
bless her heart.
I know. I know. Yeah, it just didn't work. It was the wrong color. Yeah. So we have to watch it, but fortunately in nature it works most of the time for us. Okay, so lesson 3, you all did a good job with that one. Anything else that you learned during that lesson? And aren't you glad that I didn't assign you a palette?
Mm.
That would have been a lot harder.
It would have. Yeah, I decided that was cruel a long time ago. I wouldn't do that. I'd just let you choose it because most of the time you do have to work backwards on it based on what you have. Okay, so lesson 3.
Hmm.
So what I have for you in lesson 3 is to think about shooting through other flowers. So as we're out and as we're in the garden and as we're photographing, think about shooting through and letting the other flowers in the foreground create this kind of veiled illusion. So this is using a lens zoomed out at 300 millimeters and shooting through the flowers in the foreground for the monarch in the background. So shooting through, going through the small purple flowers in the front to the cone flower in the back. And that's why in a lot of ways I like using a telephoto lens in garden photography, because it gives us the ability to blur out that foreground object. So this is using about a 300 millimeter lens as well. So shooting through, so the whole flower, whole field of Mexican hats, and then just letting those that are in the front blur out a little bit, shooting through them. And it gives you a nice, interesting effect. So Henry, when you're in those Holland gardens and you've got all those kajillion tulips, then just think about finding a tunnel and shooting all the way through them to one tulip back in the back.
Oh, cool.
And see what you get. It's just a different look and different illusion. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. This needed a little bit more stuff up in front to be able to blow it out. But, it can create an interesting effect of shooting through a bunch of blurred out flowers using your shallow depth of field and shooting through it. And then when we get that opportunity, then we can illustrate, we can do that. Here it is, once again, just shooting through those flowers at the hummingbird landing on the wire fence, and putting all those flowers in front of it and letting those in the front just blow out of focus. So shooting through those flowers for the hummingbird. So it creates an interesting effect that we can play with. And here it's got some flowers in the front of the Mexican hats. This was a great field. It went on for acres, I don't know, a couple of acres of nothing but these Mexican hats. So there was always a photo, but that one yellow one, isolating that one through all the other ones and shooting through all those Mexican hats. And this is with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. Some of you all probably have that one. So a fun lens. And then selective focusing, choosing exactly where you want to focus on your flowers. And one of the things that I want you to kind of figure out with each one of the lenses that you own is how well does that lens focus on very tiny details. So some of your lenses and some of your cameras can really get a tight focus, and some of them don't. And this is what you need to find out about your own equipment of how tight it will get a focus. So selective focus, where we're putting the focus exactly where we want it to be, and figuring out if your lens can focus on those really tiny areas, exactly where we want it to be, because as we're designing our photographs, sometimes we don't want it to go back there and focus on the wall. We want it to focus on that little bit of wrought iron. So it's just one of those things that you need to, in first exercise, we were working on how close your lens would focus, but how tight can you get as well? So can you narrow down and just get on the little railing here? Can you narrow down and just get on the anthers? How tight can you get? With your lens and with your individual focus points. Anybody ever tried working with this on your lenses, playing with it?
I have to some extent with my lenses, yes.
Yeah,
To see if I could get the focus exactly where I wanted.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Because you know, with flower photography, we just got to get right where we need to be. We can really tell if we're off. If we're on, then people are just going to like the photograph. But if we're off, it's really going to be noticeable. That red, you were working with the lens baby, Amanda, so I'm not going to criticize you too much because that's a hard lens. But you know, that red amaryllis, we should have been right there on those anthers. And that's hard, especially if you're hand holding the lens. That's very hard.
Kathy, do you recommend using a spot focus rather than the?
One of those, yeah, I use, if I'm trying to do something like this, I'm going to have to narrow down to one individual focus point and get it, you know, on that piece of metal
Okay.
right there. And then move, you know, our focus points move around, luckily, so we can move those focus points around, put them. But yeah, in something like this where we're trying to get really, really narrowed down, than using one individual focus point. Yeah, that selective focus is real important.
Wow.
So same thing here, just trying to get right exactly where we need to be. And if you notice, if you look closely at my photograph, I'm tightly focused on the water drops up at the top of the canna lily, but I'm not on the drop. And that's what I was trying to do, was to get right on the drop. I'm up here on the top, but I'm not quite right there where I should have been. So, you know, it's just trying to get that focus exactly where you want it to be. And if you're hand holding, that's going to make it even harder. But with flowers, sometimes we need that focus point to be exactly where we want it to be. So when we're trying to show the structure of a flower, for instance, we need to make sure that we're focusing where we need to be. And then also, as I've pointed out several times, we need to make sure we've got the right depth of field. All of you on your cameras have a depth of field preview meter, or depth of field preview button. It's not a meter, it's a button. And the depth of field preview button, if you're using a digital SLR, is in the front right by the lens, and you push it and then you can see exactly how much is in focus. So if you're f8, you can see how much you've got in focus. It's going to get darker. Those of you using mirrorless cameras, we see our actual depth of field through the viewfinder. So when you're at f8, you're actually looking at what is f8, where with a digital SLR, we're set at 4.0 or 5.6. So we don't always see our exact depth of field until we push our depth of field button. So with your mirrorless, wherever we focus on this flower, for instance, on the structure of this flower, then we've got to make sure that we've got what we want in focus. In this case, this more three-dimensional flower, but we don't have enough depth of field to go back to that stick in the back, because if I show you that stick in the back, then the viewer's eye is going to go back to that stick. So it's a really delicate balancing act, and that's where we've got to make sure that we're focusing exactly where we want to be focusing. So we want to also, in flower photography, we want to emphasize the structure of many of our flowers. We want to emphasize the beauty of a bud and how it grows and what its structure is. So when we're choosing where we want to focus, then we need to think about that, because many times we're trying to show exactly what the structure is of the flower. And that holds true for our butterflies as well. Many of them are small, and when we're focused on that butterfly, we need to be right on the butterfly so that we've got the proper depth of field for that butterfly to show all the structure, as well as, in this case, the flower. And here I'm shooting through flowers as well. So I'm using some of that foreground to blow out by shooting through the flowers. So that selective focus gets us right where we need to be. And then as we start talking about changing backgrounds, this is the other flowers out of the gladiola package. So, you know, I'm photographing one, but I got 12 gladiolas when I bought this. So the other gladiolas are just in another vase as a background. So the background now has harmony. and they're moved 8, 10, 15 feet away so that they're the right color, and then they're forming my background for me. So that's just other flowers out of the bouquet that are just moved a little further back. And then here's the same gladiola done with a black background. And this is a piece of black velveteen. So not shiny velvet, not plush velvet, but velveteen. And it's about 2 yards. And you can also use a black fleece if you would like. And the thing I like about black fleece is if it gets dirty, it's easy just to throw in the washing machine and wash it. So you don't have to worry about that. Velveteen's pretty much the same way. It's indestructible. But by using this as a sheet of material, I can fold it up and then use it when I need to. If I'm out in the garden, then all I did here between these 2 photos was I draped the gladiolas behind in black velvet. So I just threw the black velvet over the gladiolas that were behind and then started playing with it, because now I'm looking at a different type of photograph. So your artificial backgrounds, you could walk around with a piece of black velvet in your camera bag. Doesn't take up a lot of room, doesn't take up a lot of space, and you can use it as a black background. And then in the house or on the back porch, then it becomes a really nice, handy background as well. If you wanted to do the same thing with a piece of dark green fleece or dark green velveteen, you could do the same thing, and now you can have green. So as artificial backgrounds. And here's another artificial background. I showed Lexi and Susan this when we were in the macro class. This is a tulip hanging upside down. And the background on this is the cellophane that wraps Scott's toilet paper. It's the blue logo for Scott's. And I cut it out, wet it, and stuck it on the glass window. So that's the window of my back door. I stuck the blue to it so I don't have to worry about it, moved the tulip to where it was in front of it, and then saw, yeah, okay, they all look good together. Now I can start playing with the water drops. So playing with water drops, every flower has a way that it drains water. And you see that on this tulip, the water drains all the way down, and then it forms a really nice ball at the bottom, or a nice water drop at the bottom. You see that one. And you can squirt a flower lightly, watch its drainage pattern, and then wherever it's draining, wherever all these water drops are going to accumulate, then that's where it'll form the ball of water, and then that'll eventually fall off once it gets heavy enough. So every flower has its own drainage pattern. Every leaf has its own drainage pattern in nature. If you want to make those water drops a little bit bigger in our setup environment, then you can add a little glycerin to the water, and then it will make the water a little bit thicker. And if you want to get really crazy, you can add some clear Karo syrup. Don't add the brown Karo syrup. That doesn't look good. And don't use brown maple syrup. That doesn't look good. But if you use clear Karo syrup, this water drop is not going to fall off right away. So if you ever need a hanging water drop, you could mix a little bit of Karo syrup with a little bit of water and then drop that. And then when it gets to this suspended drop part, it'll stay a little bit longer. Be careful because it's going to be sticky. So don't get it on your camera, but luckily it's all washable, but be careful with it if you're going to play with it. Anybody ever played with glycerin or the Karo syrup before?
Well, I've used the glycerin, but not Karo syrup.
Yeah. So the clear Karo syrup makes a nice solid water drop that's going to stay there for a while, so that you don't have to, because many times these water drops only stay for a couple of seconds and then they're gone. So this is your way to get a little bit more long-term water drop. But just remember that you want to put it in a natural place. You don't want to put it in a place that this wouldn't naturally form. I see that in calendars many times, and it drives me crazy because that's not the way that water drop would form on that flower. It's in the wrong spot. So keep it natural so that it looks right. But if you just squirt a flower with a mister, you'll notice how it accumulates water, and you'll see the drainage pattern pretty fast. If you want to get these drainage patterns on your flowers, don't squirt too much. If you squirt too much, then the flower becomes saturated, and then it just drains all the water off, like in a heavy rain. So you have to mist it very lightly and then watch how it's going, and then watch where it accumulates water. And same type thing. You see that this tulip, when you mist it, it forms really nice balls of water up on top. This background is the logo on Bounty paper towels. So I just went looking for something that might match my pink tulip, and I found the logo on the Bounty paper towels, cut it out, wet it, stuck it to the window. Now I don't have to worry about the background moving, but at the same time, I've got the sunlight coming through that background, and so it's adding to my light. Y'all good with those? More artificial background ideas. Now water drop ideas. Okay, so focus stacking. Lexi and Susan, you all did this when we were talking about macro photography. Has anybody done focus stacking?
Yes.
Henry, you've done it? Yeah. How'd it work?
Well, it works pretty well. My camera actually has a bracketing feature either for HDR or focus. Yeah. And so I can take like 7 shots and then put them in load them into Photoshop, and yeah, works well.
Yeah, it works really, really well. And so this just allows us to do a lot of new things with focus stacking. So here's an example. Let me see. I think it's the next one. There we go. It's a little video. These are all the pictures that I took of this Sotol. You know, Sotol's got a very 3-dimensional yucca type appearance to it. And here's all the pictures that I took and then stacked it all together. So it's about 10 or 15 different pictures going all the way back, and then stacked it all together. So focus stacking is a way that we can now add depth of field to what would be a shallow depth of field photograph. So here's a peacock feather, and it's leaning toward the camera, going away from the camera. And I started on the next photograph, and now you'll see the complete depth of field on this photograph. Oh. And what I did on this photograph is I started, because once again, the flower's kind of coming toward the camera. I mean, the feather's coming toward the camera. I started at the very bottom and then just started focusing all the way back to the very end, and then focus stacked it. So this was like an F11, and then this is a focus stack.
Wow.
So a focus stack just gives you the ability to layer these pictures on top of each other and get more depth of field. And I sent you instructions on how to do this today because I realized it wasn't in your handout. So now you've got it. So here's a Bouvardia. This grows out in the desert of Big Bend. It's a difficult flower to photograph because its blooms go in every different direction. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one picture after the other, focusing on each one of the blooms. And then, so this is the finished image with all of the Bouvardia blooms. And then here's a blow up of it. And you see that you get some little hazy areas sometimes where you didn't quite gather all the pieces properly. So you may not have captured every piece of the flower properly. But here's one shot and it looks like I'm focused right there. Here's another shot and it looks like I'm focused right there. Here's another shot and it looks like I'm focused back here or back here. And then I'm focused back here, either there or there, one of those over there. So, you know, just focusing on various flowers. And then also I did a whole F22 as the last one, just to see if I could get even more depth of field, and then blended them all together. So the instructions that I gave you are either for Lightroom or Photoshop, whichever one you want to use. And the software does a pretty good job when you're blending them together. And Henry, did you use Photoshop or Lightroom? Did you use an Adobe product to blend?
I did use Photoshop.
Yeah, yeah. And Susan, you've done it, right? In the other class, yeah.
Yes, I did. I
Yeah.
used Photoshop.
Okay, okay. And then Lexi did it out of Lightroom last time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Jennifer, Amanda, y'all tried it?
No, I mean,
No,
No. It is pretty darn amazing. Now, Henry mentioned that his camera has it. And my camera, my R cameras, all the Canon Rs have it as well. So the Sonys have it, Olympus has it. Everybody has this now if you're using one of the mirrorless cameras. And the tricky part is knowing how many pictures do we tell the camera to take. At Canon, it's called focus bracketing. And the tricky part is knowing how many pictures do we take, how far apart do we want the focus to be in each one of the pictures. And because we can do this as a landscape or we can do this as a snowflake. You know, we can do this really, really small, or we can do it medium, or we can do it really, really big. And that's the tricky part of knowing and just kind of getting a feel for how your camera operates. So here's this trumpet flower. And in this one, I think it is focused right here. Each one of the pictures I show you, it's going to be difficult to see the change in focus. But we've come up here to the front just a little bit more. This is on an auto, by the way. I've just clicked the button and it's going to take 10 pictures really fast. And so here it's changing focus again, changing focus again. Start watching this bottom flower and the buds down here, because you can gradually see that the camera quits focusing up on the top flowers and now it's down on those bottom flowers. So see how we're down in here now in focus. There you go. And then that's what happens when I layer them all on top of each other. So that's 10 focus stacks. So this one, I think I could have done a whole lot better if I would have given it a little bit more space. And then also just making sure that it was focused a bit better on each one of the flowers. So the camera does a pretty good job. But sometimes we have to nudge it along. So this is a Hercules club down in the rainforest in Costa Rica. You can see where an ant has burrowed into this little one right there and threw his little ant dust right there. But this is 1 picture, 2 pictures, 3 pictures. So it's not even the full 10, and then stacked together. And then here's on a orchid. And what I have learned on doing these stacks is focus on the thing that is closest to you. That's your starting point, because from wherever you focus, the camera goes backwards. So you always want to focus on the thing that's closest to you. But you see in the orchid, we got a pretty good amount of detail in the throat of the orchid, and then a little bit of out of focus toward the edge. So that means I didn't even choose very, very fat distance to go. And this is a bit more crazy. I was working on a sunflower field last summer, and found that even with an f-stop of 8, I wasn't able to get the bees totally in focus. So I ended up doing a lot of focus stacking, and not very much, only asking the camera to go about 1 inch. But then each shot that I would take with my R cameras, Canon R cameras, I punch the button once and it takes 10 pictures rapidly. So before the bee moves, it just fires off 10 shots. So I don't have to hold the button down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I just hit it once and it it zips it along. But that worked really, really well for getting these bees all covered in pollen. And it doesn't look like you would need a focus stack for something like this, but it turned out I did, because the depth of field was just so shallow. using it's 700 millimeters. So using a lot of millimeters. So-
I've never used the focus stacking that's in my camera. Do you allow the camera autofocuses? Because when I've done focus stacks before, I do manual focus always.
If it's something like this, then I might do an autofocus because the bee's moving so fast. If
Okay.
it were something like the orchid, then I might physically focus, because I could have gone a little bit closer on this area right here, which is probably the closest to the camera. And so sometimes I use manual and sometimes I use autofocus, but I blend them later on in software versus letting the camera blend them.
Oh, okay, okay. But when you use the manual focus, then you put your lens on manual focus and then you
Uh-huh.
just, okay, okay.
Yeah. No, because it won't
No?
do that. It has to
Oh,
be an
okay.
autofocus. Yes.
Oh, okay, because
Yes.
when I do my focus on a focusing rail,
Uh-huh.
my lens is on manual focus the whole
Yes.
time.
And then you're moving the focusing rail.
And then I'm moving the focusing rail.
Exactly. Exactly. And then those red flowers that I showed you a little bit ago, I physically focused on each one of those red flowers.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But
yes.
but when you're doing it in the camera, then you have the lens on autofocus. And
Uh-huh.
it starts wherever you tell it to start
Yeah.
and then it goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. But you have to tell you and how far do we go? How many shots do we take? That's where you've got to kind of know how much distance we're talking about, because the camera doesn't give you a whole lot of precision or a whole lot of instructions. So set it to number 2 if you only want to go this far. And that's where you've just got to kind of play with your camera a little bit. Have you found the same thing, Henry?
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, if you're doing a macro shot like this, of course, the distance from the edge of the flower on the right to the bee
Yeah.
looks pretty great. And if you're doing a distance shot, they're not. So I didn't know I'm not real clear with how you set the
Yeah.
distance.
Yeah, because on this one, if you think about it, coming out of a sunflower, I'm dealing with this much distance.
Yeah.
Where if I were dealing with a really big orchid, then I
Right.
would be dealing with a bigger distance. If I were doing a landscape, then I would be dealing with an even bigger distance. And when I first got the camera, I was setting too much distance
Okay.
instead of a little teeny weeny amount of distance. And then on a shot like this, where I was working on the bees, then I couldn't remember whether I'd asked the camera to do 10 or 8. And so are all of these pictures part of the focus stack, or when does it start and when does it begin? So
Yeah.
there's we got a lot of pictures to work on later on.
So would you, and I know it's going to always be different, but for flower photography, would you maybe start on a 2 for the distance and
Yeah.
see if that works and then come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just kind of play with it. Here's a
Okay.
little beetle. And
Cool.
this is the first focusing point was back here on the back of the leaf. And
Mhm.
then the last focusing point, I wanted to be up on those antennas. It worked pretty well.
Mhm.
So all I know is I focused back here on this leaf, set it for a little bit more distance, and then fired away, and it worked.
That's great.
Yeah. So focus stacking is really good. And you don't have to do it with 10 photos. So the leather flower over on the left-hand side is only 2 photos. One on the front and cameras on the tripod, because this is just a small flower. But 1 photograph of the front of the flower, and then the second photograph I focused probably up on the bell of the flower right there. And that's only 2. So I did a whole lot of 10, but it turned out I really didn't need 10 on that one. And then
Yeah.
over here on this other one, these are some really cool wildflowers that curve around, and they have a whole lot of 3-dimensional surface up on the top of the bloom. The bloom just curves backwards. So this one is a 10 shot. The one over on the right-hand side is 10 shots.
Do you have a problem with wind? If you're
Yes.
out?
Yes. And you've got to, with this leather flower, even though we were deep in the forest,
Mhm.
any amount of movement caused movement of the flower.
Okay.
So yes, that's very difficult sometimes. The purple flowers over on the side, over on the right-hand side, we had a lot of bright sunlight. There's a diffuser, the center part of the reflector, to block the light a bit.
Mhm.
And since we did have a really fast shutter speed, I could just fire off 10 shots real
Oh, cool.
fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it did pretty well.
Yeah.
You know how three-dimensional milkweed is? You know, there's blooms going every different direction. And so this is a focus stack on some milkweed, just to give you that three-dimensional appearance of it.
Mm.
And then this is another focus stack working on a small cactus growing really close to the ground. So this is, you know, one of those 3-inch high cactuses blooming down in South Texas, but just trying to get enough depth of field so that all of that bloom came in focus. So it's a focus stack on that one as well. And remember, if you take something like this and you end up going all the way back to the back, so your rocks are in focus, nothing says you have to use that in your stack.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took a picture and it ended up going, so your last 2 pictures are just of in sharp or tack sharp rocks, then just don't use those last 2 pictures.
Hmm.
So you can cut it where you start getting your depth of field that you're looking for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nothing says you have to go all the way to the 10. Practical reason for focus stacking. So we're talking about flowers, but this is a focus stack on my granddaughter when she graduated. So it's a focus stack of one of the pictures in front had the glitter all out of focus. And a couple of the pictures in the stack, because I started on her fingertips before she started blowing the glitter. So she's holding her hands out, and I started the focus stack on her fingers and went forward. And several of the 10 pictures, the glitter was up in front of her face. So that means just don't use that section. Don't use that slice.
Okay. Yeah.
So practical reason for doing focus stacking. It comes in handy. Don't think that, you know, it's only used on flower or macro photography. So it's just nice to know where it is. It's nice to know where you can find it on your camera and how you can do it pretty fast. So this is a focus stack on a metal mark butterfly, and it's just simply a focus on each edge of the wing. So it's about 6 or 7 different pictures, and all I'm doing is just focusing on various edges of the wings and then stacking it together. And then you might have some of these already in your files. So this is a blend of 2 images of this really tiny little sulfur butterfly. But in the first picture, the wingtips weren't in focus. And in the second picture, the edges were better, but they still weren't, they were better than in the first. And then when I blended them together, they looked great.
Hmm.
And I did have a problem with the antennas because the antenna moved between the 2 photographs. So I had to go, we don't see it too much here, but it did. But so I had to go clip out the antenna and paste it over it.
Hmm.
So a little bit of work that have to be done. But you might already have some of these in your files where you were playing around and you didn't quite get the focus right on the same subjects. Try focus stacking them, see if it works.
Cool.
And then this is a focus stack on dayflowers. The dayflowers have started blooming around here, one of the first spring flowers that we get. And it's just, I brought it inside so I didn't have to worry about wind. And then I used an artificial background and then started focusing way up in the very front here and then just moved through. And I should have gone all the way through. Next time I try it, I'll go all the way through. So questions on focus stacking? Nope. Okay, so what you have for your homework this week is I want you to shoot through some flowers with your subject in focus. So either, go to one of the gardens, go to a garden center, and shoot through some flowers, or if you have enough flowers around the yard, move the pots around. Take this photo with one lens and then take the photo with another lens that you use, that you own. So 2 of your lenses shooting through something. And then I want you to isolate one aspect of a bloom with one of your lenses and, the anthers or whatever it might be. And then do the same with another lens that you own, or if you have extension tubes or close-up filters, throw one of those on. So you can use the same lens in that assignment. If you own extension tubes or close-up filters, then use those, and that would be a second part of that one. Try your hand at using another artificial background. And I'd like you to use 2 backgrounds this time. And you can use the same ones that you already bought. Henry, you said you bought a whole bunch, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Okay, so we're all going over to Henry's house and using
Yes,
his
we'll have a
backgrounds.
party.
We'll bring the flowers. We'll use
All
Henry's
right.
backgrounds. Yeah. And then I want you to illustrate a photo you took using focus stacking. So I want you to try focus stacking as well.
Now, okay, so I've got a question on how do you use 2 backgrounds?
So change your backgrounds out. So use 2 different colors. So you bought a whole bunch of backgrounds, right?
Right. So just have 2 different images.
2
One
different
with
images.
One background and one
Yep.
with another.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
got
Yep.
it.
Yep. Just try some different things with some backgrounds. If
Okay.
you want to try what I did, find something that's got a cling film wrapper on it and see if it, stick it to your window and see if it looks good. Play around with that. If you also want to play with water drops, go ahead and play with water drops. And if you want to try playing with the glycerin or with the Karo syrup, give that one a try as well. So definitely focus stacking. We've got some more artificial backgrounds, and that could also be in your focus stack if you want. And then I want you to isolate one aspect of a bloom and make it a pretty picture. Work on the photography by isolating one aspect of a bloom and then shoot through some flowers with a selective focus. So this is a good chance for you to see how well that camera focuses on one small aspect of a bloom. Questions on your homework? So Jennifer, you figuring out how to use those overalls again?
It's possible. We'll see.
If possible, we'll see the overalls again. Or the turquoise ladder in Amanda's case. It's a good little ladder.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, any questions on homework? Nope, that's supposed to be cold, sorry, but you got to do your homework assignments, okay? Okay, well, if you all don't have any more questions, then I will stop sharing my screen. There we go, okay. And then anything else before I say good night? No, okay. Good luck with your work, with your homework. As usual, if you have any questions, email me. I'll be home all week long. And if you get stuck on anything, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be here. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
See you next week.
All right. Good night.